Questioning with Ms. Gray for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, the United States, New Zealand, Japan, Germany, Afghanistan, and what looks like about 100 other countries all have something in common. Residents in those countries with certain levels of hearing loss can use an Apple AirPod hearing aid feature. And right on the Apple website, it states, due to regulatory restrictions, Apple is unable to release the hearing test and hearing aid features in Canada at this time. This issue was originally brought to me from one of the residents in my riding. So the Canadian government, their red tape is blocking access to an accessibility option for persons with hearing loss. So on this study that is Canada Without Barriers, and as the Minister of Persons with Disabilities, what actions are you taking on this?
Thanks for raising that question. And I think first and foremost, let me just take you back on where we actually came to building an Accessible Canada Act. This was about 5 years ago when we were able to, when this act came into force, and I think it's important for you to know this act is a foundation in really building and changing systems, systemic changes that need to take
Minister,
place in making that happen.
What the question is, are you aware of this situation?
We're always working with the communities and making sure that we're working with industry on the ground.
Are you aware of this issue? Are you aware of this issue?
This is the first time I've heard this particular issue, but I'm happy to work with you and all members in this House to ensure that we remove barriers for persons with disabilities.
Therefore, Minister, if you can commit today to looking into this and getting back to this committee by December 31st as to what you are doing and what your government is doing to remove these barriers so that Canadians have the same access that other countries have. Will you commit to getting back to this committee on that?
I'm always happy to work with all members of this committee and all members in the committee, and happy to look into it. And I'll turn to my officials if they have anything to add on.
Minister, my question is, would you look into this and get back to this committee by December 31st?
I'm always happy to look into it, but I'm looking to my officials if they have any.
It's a yes or no. It's a yes or no question.
I'm always happy to look into it and get back to this committee.
Get back to us by December 31st. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Minister, the last time that you were at this committee in April, I asked you 3 times if Canadians living with disabilities are facing a cost of living crisis, and you would not provide a yes or no answer. So I'm giving you the opportunity for the 4th time today. Yes or no, are Canadians with disabilities facing a cost of living crisis?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think it's important to recognize after the pandemic, we've certainly seen challenges with global inflation that Canadians were facing, the challenges that Canadians have seen. But I can also tell you, Mr. Chair, through you, we have seen this particular year, inflation has come down. We have seen the Bank of Canada cut interest rates not once, not twice, but 5 times just until, as we know yesterday,
my question is,
we have put forward supports for persons with disabilities on the ground.
Minister, you're not willing to answer if persons with disabilities are in a cost of living crisis?
Mr. Chair,
it's a yes or no question.
Mr. Chair, if my honourable member would allow me to answer, like she never did last time I was here, I'll be happy to report that we're working with communities on the ground. For the first time ever, we have put forward a statutory benefit and Canada Disability Benefit that is going to help over 600,000 persons with disabilities that are going to receive checks, Mr. Speaker, July of 2025.
So, Minister, you're obviously not willing to answer that, and that will be noted for sure by persons with disabilities and advocates of persons with disabilities for sure. As well, on the Canada Disability Benefit, which you just referenced, when did you determine that the maximum amount of $200 a month would lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty? When did you determine that that was the amount that would do that?
Mr. Chair, through you, as the honourable member very knows, that the budget was tabled this year, where there was $6.1 billion put forward to support persons with disabilities that is going to help over 600,000, some of the most vulnerable individuals with disabilities, to really close that poverty gap in this country. The
Minister,
first
that wasn't
of
the
its
question.
kind.
The question, Minister, can you please answer the question? When did you determine that that was the correct amount?
Mr. Chair, as the honourable member knows, budget was tabled this year, and we worked with the disability community from day one. $6.1 billion, the single largest budget item this budget to support Canadians with disabilities. Over 600,000 persons with disabilities will be getting their checks of July of this year, of next year, and we're going to make sure that Canadians get those support.
Minister, I'm going to ask you another question because you're obviously not willing to answer that either. You've spoken at this committee about getting arrangements signed with provinces to avoid clawbacks. How many provinces or territories have you now signed arrangements with or agreements with?
Apart from the 4, every single province and territories have committed publicly that they are not going to be clawing back the benefits for persons with disabilities. In fact, I will tell you, I think it's important to recognize the collaboration we've been having. In fact, in Newfoundland and Labrador, because of the work that we have put forward, they have actually, I think it's important to know that people in Newfoundland or Labrador are going to get an additional support because of the collaboration that we put forward. And that's the type of leadership that it takes to work with provinces and territories.
I'm going to ask you another question, Minister. Earlier this year, you hosted a National Aviation Accessibility Summit, and the Accessibility Commissioner welcomed the event, but wrote afterwards, progress overall is slow, people with disabilities are rightly fed up, and we need concrete changes quickly. So my question for you is, how can anyone trust what is being accomplished when you host a summit and come away without any deliverables or timelines?
Mr. Chair, after years of conservative lack of interest in persons with disabilities, we were able to put forward the first ever Air Accessibility Summit, working a lot, experts on the ground with industry, ensuring that persons with disabilities were on the ground. We have committed to better data, and some of the...
Thank you.
I'm happy to come back to this later.
Thank you. Ms. Gray, before I move to Mr. Long, I would simply ask, it is the members' time, and I respect the members' time in the questioning, but I would also ask for the benefit of the interpreters that not everybody speak at the same time. I'll be diplomatic. We will now move to Ms. Falk for 5 minutes. Ms. Falk?
Thank you, Chair. When this committee studied C81, the Accessible Canada Act in 2018, we heard repeated and urgent testimony from disability advocates and organizations that the Act lacked clear timelines and deadlines. That while it perhaps was well-intentioned, it was widely recognized that it did not have the teeth and enforcement mechanisms to ensure the removal or prevention of barriers. 5 years after the passage of this bill, it is clear that these concerns were well-founded. Mr. David Lepofsky, he told this committee that the Act does not at present require any disability barrier to ever be removed or to be prevented in any organization that the federal government can regulate. Not one single accessibility standard that is enforceable in law has been enacted in the 5 years since this law was passed. As a result, progress towards accessibility has been glacial and agonizingly slow. So given that we're a quarter of the way to 2040, why have you failed to enact a single legally enforceable accessibility standard?
Thank you for that question, and that's fundamentally not true. And to give you the details,
are you suggesting that the witness was misleading?
I will make sure you have the exact information on that. But
are you suggesting that Dr. David Lepofsky was misleading this committee?
I will give you the exact
as somebody
details.
Who has a disability, and this is what he does. Are you suggesting that he is misleading the committee?
That is not what I said.
Chair, I think
we have a point of order. So.
With respect, Chair, I think it's only fair that the minister has a chance to answer the questions. Thank you.
I would remind the member, I'm
it
lenient.
Is my time.
I'm lenient. It's the member's time. I just ask both participants to respect the fact that it has to be interpreted. Ms. Falk, you have the floor.
So why have you failed to enact a single legally enforceable accessibility standard?
Do you want an answer?
Federally regulated industries are legally obligated to publish accessibility plans and progress reports. But as Mr. Bill Adair, the Executive Director of Spinal Cord Injury Canada, told the committee, over 400 large federally regulated entities are ignoring the requirement. and nothing is being done to enforce it. So either the obligation is not legally enforceable, or your government is not requiring enforcement. Which one is it?
Madam, Mr. Chair, through you, if the honourable member would let me answer the question, we have an Office of the Accessibility Commissioner that actually leads and does this work. And I would love to turn into my officials because she can give you the exact standards and regulations that we have put forward and that have been enacted on. But if I may.
We've got two witnesses that have told this committee during this study.
Would you like an answer?
That it is not.
Would you like an answer?
Okay, you can provide the answer in writing to this committee, please.
I think it's important, since I have 2 hours, that you should get an answer to your question.
Pardon me, Chair?
Do you want an answer?
Is that through
Mr.
you
Chair,
or is that
through
to
you,
me, Chair?
if I may ask the honourable member, would she like an answer?
Please provide the answer in writing. I've given two different
You have
questions.
two
and
Mr. Chair,
I
she has
haven't
2
received it
hours
yet,
with
so if
me,
the
and she
department
wouldn't
could
like.
please
She doesn't want to listen to
provide
an
that.
answer.
Do you think that we can realistically achieve a barrier-free Canada by 2040 without compliance measures?
We have strict compliance measures. If the honourable member, up to $250,000 in fines that can be enacted. But I would love to turn into my officials. Tina, do you mind talking about it?
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Chair, so I think it's important
Could you
to
actually, would you be able to provide, I've got very limited time, and we know that it's been very difficult to get the minister here to this committee, so I would like to get whatever you're unable to provide right now in live time in writing to the committee.
So you clearly don't want an answer.
Are you able to provide the data to this committee to demonstrate the progress toward a barrier-free Canada, what the government has done? Provide that in writing to the committee, the department or the minister?
Do you want an answer, Mr. Chair? Through you, if I may
Okay,
ask.
so I'm going to say they're going to...
Point of order. Point of order. The minister is explicitly asked to answer the question, but she's not being allowed to.
I've given her multiple opportunities.
But she's
and
saying.
she hasn't.
But she,
Through
Chair,
two
she
different
would like to
questions.
answer it right now.
Again, okay.
She doesn't know the answer.
Point of order is specific as it relates to one member interrupting another member. It is the member's time, and the member's time is to question the witness. The witness can choose to provide what information that is available, or can indicate they will submit it in writing at a later time. But it is the member's time. I'm lenient on both sides. What specifically state the point of order?
It's my understanding that when a question's asked, the same amount of time the question took should be afforded to the witness.
No, that's not.
That's been a general practice, no, Mr. Chair? Is that not the? So you can ask a question and then
Okay,
not
Mr.
even ask the answer,
Mr.
not even wait for the answer, and just
Mr.
ask a
Coteau.
question again over and over
Mr.
again.
Coteau.
It doesn't make sense.
Can I respond to that point of order?
No, Mr. Coteau,
No?
that is
Okay.
debate, and I'm going to conduct a meeting as to the order, to the rules of the House of Commons.
Okay.
The member
Thank you,
has
Chair.
the floor.
Thank you.
For her time.
I know just
And just be careful.
Well,
I would expect some courtesy to the witness, but it is your time.
Absolutely.
member.
And I just want to point out, Chair, that obviously I want an answer from the department and the minister, but clearly they're playing games and wasting time. I've asked the same question more than once, and I'm not getting, so just please table the answers to the committee. That would be wonderful. In her first report, the Chief Accessibility Officer had recommended that accessibility training be mandatory. She also told this committee that it would be hard to achieve a barrier-free Canada without doing so. Do you agree with her recommendation, yes or no?
I work extremely closely with our incredibly Chief Accessibility Officer.
Her recommendation?
I work really closely with her, and I
Okay,
work
I asked
to
for yes or
ensure-
no. This is where this is frustrating. Have you responded to her recommendation? And what actions have you taken to make sure and ensure that accessibility training is mandated for federally regulated workplaces?
Training is an extremely important tool. That's something that we have been working
Why is it not
alongside.
mandated?
That's something that we have been working alongside all federally.
That's one way to ensure by
Point of
mandating
order,
this is
Mr.
one
Chair,
way to
point of order.
ensure that those with
Ms. Falk, your
disabilities
time
can
is
access.
over. Ms. Falk, your time is over. We'll now
Point
go
of
to
order,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Your point of
there
order.
has to at least allow the witness to finish the sentence. The member keeps interrupting.
We have
Not
very
you can't even
minimal
go
time with
halfway.
ministers.
She's doing it to me as we speak on a point of order.
I would ask all members to respect the rules of the House. It is, and again, I conduct a meeting. It is the member's time, and if the member's not happy with an answer, the member can proceed to their next line. I'll continue in that process. Questions? We're beginning with Ms. Gray. Ms. Gray for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The finance minister admitted that deficits cause inflation and promised she would cap the deficit at an already crazy amount of $40 billion and wouldn't go a penny over. Your fake feminist prime minister came along and not only bullied her into spending more, but also pushed her through her own fiscal guardrail and is making her take the fall, all the while trying to fire his female cabinet minister and replace her with carbon tax Mark Carney. So do you think it's disgusting that the Prime Minister, what he is doing to Canada's first female finance minister?
Mr. Chair, I think it's disgusting to see what the Conservatives are doing, trying to play political partisan games when what they should be doing is supporting Canadians when it comes to affordability. Mr. Speaker, we just put forward a GST, HST tax break that is going to start this Saturday, which they voted against. You know, it's shameful. I expect members
Minister,
of the Conservative Party, where they talk
today?
about axing the tax, but any opportunity that they get to cut
Minister,
taxes, they vote against it.
Minister,
it is quite shameful for them to do that.
Back to my time. You're obviously on the side with Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney than on the side of Minister Freeland. So I will end it there because the minister is not willing to answer the question, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Giovanni.
Thank you. Minister, last time we had a conversation at the Heritage Committee, it became apparent you were not familiar with the Black Justice Strategy. Have you had a chance to read the external report for that yet?
Mr. Chair, I always have engaged with the worked alongside my colleague, Minister Virani, on the Black Justice Strategy, and I'll continue to do this work.
So, again, not clear whether you've read it, which is, again, what happened last time. Can you comment on whether you support the recommendations in that report, the policy recommendations?
Mr. Chair, there are many recommendations that come out of different reports. My colleague, Minister Virani, is leading this work. I work extremely closely with him in addressing systemic racism, systemic anti-Black racism within our institutions, within our criminal justice system, and we're going to continue to do that work alongside my colleague, Minister Virani.
Well, one of the policy recommendations in that report is the decriminalization of a 30-day supply of illicit drugs. And I think members of the Black community who saw that might have questions about whether you support it or not. So I think it's fair to ask you, do you support that policy recommendation?
Mr. Chair, as I said, that's the work that my colleague, Minister Virani, is leading. We work extremely closely with the Black stakeholders across this country, addressing systemic racism within our institutions, within our criminal justice system is extremely important. I work alongside my colleague, and when the Justice Strategy comes out, the honourable member can look into it and read it and really understand what it aims to do, rather than try to imply.
Has called this history-making and a milestone for Black people in this country. And I think it's fair for Black people to then look at it and say, is this what you intend to do to our communities? Do you intend to decriminalize a 30-day supply of drugs in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And to pose that question to a minister and a member of the Liberal government's cabinet. So why is this such a difficult question to answer?
Mr. Chair, clearly the member, I've known this now for a long time, and it was very clear in our last interaction, the member does not understand what diversity, inclusion, and equity actually means.
Thank you for articulating that. Maybe I can ask you some questions and learn something today about diversity and inclusion. I've got a statement here from a witness who appeared before the Justice Committee, Rachel Cook from the University of Alberta, who said, and I quote, "I think the EDI system has made the problem of anti-Semitism worse. I think it can start at the top, but it also starts in institutions and in massively funding EDI programming, such that quite literally when I ask who decides who is in these EDI meetings, is it a percentage of the population? Their response was, it's in the groups that deserve equity and deserve inclusion." So, Minister, I'd like to ask, who deserves equity and who deserves inclusion in your mind?
Mr. Chair, my goal as a Minister for Diversity, Inclusion, and Persons with Disabilities is to ensure that we're creating equal opportunities for every single person in this country, regardless of their age, regardless of their race, regardless of their identities, regardless of their abilities, and that takes fundamental changes within our institution to do that work. You have to be deliberate about making that change. Clearly something the Conservative Party does not understand. They can think back to, Mr. Speaker, they can think back to their snitch lines. We all remember the time under the Harper government. They have absolutely no idea what diversity inclusion means.
I'm going to get through this, so you can keep trying to filibuster if you like.
Mr. Giovanni, I called order.
Oh, yeah, I heard.
Good. Because we have to respect the interpreter's ability to properly translate.
I think we also have to respect convention.
Mr. Giovanni, I am speaking. You have the floor again.
Thank you. So when a university student from our country says that diversity, equity, and inclusion is disadvantaging her community, your response to that is, well, I just going to keep making these blanket fluff statements. She's asking quite clearly, you as the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion are in a position to answer her question. How do you decide who deserves equity and who deserves inclusion? Why are there Canadians who feel excluded by your DEI framework?
It's clear that the honourable member does not really understand. He does not understand that there are systems in place that anti-Black racism, systemic racism is a real thing. It has root causes within our institutions, and we have a responsibility. Every single person should have a responsibility to ensure we do everything to be very deliberate about including people, ensuring that they have an equal opportunity to fully participate in our economies and our country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your time is up. We'll now go to Mr. Van Bynen.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, your mandate says that you will lead a whole-of-government approach to build a more inclusive, equitable, and just society and take actions to prevent radicalization to violence and to protect vulnerable communities. Does that include protecting our Jewish communities from anti-Semitism?
Absolutely, Mr. Stewart.
And do you believe that's a major issue in Canada, anti-Semitism?
Absolutely, and we condemn it, and we are working extremely closely with the Jewish community. We are working extremely closely with my colleague, Minister of Public Safety.
According to StatsCan, hate crimes are up 251% since 2015. 2/3 of religiously motivated hate crimes have been against the Jewish community this year. Your mandate calls on you to combat hate crimes in Canada. Meanwhile, we saw anti-Semitic mobs take to the streets shouting, "From Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution, intifada revolution." Do you unequivocally condemn these chants from the hateful mobs on our streets? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, through you, every single person in this House, and I think every Canadian condemns hate and anti-Semitism.
Do you condemn it
Absolutely,
unequivocally?
I condemn hate and anti-Semitism in this
Minister,
country.
2 weeks ago,
I also want to allude to you, when you talked about hate crimes,
You've
I think
answered
it's
my
important.
question. Thank you.
No, you need to know
Minister,
the answer.
2 weeks ago, an anti-Semitic mob took over the streets of Montreal. Protesters stood in front of a Jewish counter-protesters, made Nazi salutes, and reportedly said, "The final solution is coming your way." The final solution. You know what the final solution is. Do you condemn these protesters and the anti-Semitic threats?
Mr. Chair, every single person, and we all condemn unequivocally anti-Semitism or hate of any form in this country. In fact, I have put forward Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate, $274 million that we have put forward, Mr. Chair, and the Conservative Party of Canada voted against it. It is shame on them to pretend to care about hate in this country when every chance that they have gotten, they have voted against it, including
they issued a declaration calling the barbarism of
Jewish
October
Canadians
7th
in this
justified and necessary. A justified and necessary act of resistance, settler colonialism, genocide, and apartheid.
Point of order.
Mr. Long?
Chair, the minister has clearly said she condemns these acts.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Thank you, Mr. Long. Next debate. We'll return
Point
the
of order,
floor
Mr.
to
Chair.
Mr. Stewart. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that point of order, I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, if you can ask the minister to control herself and stop
Ms. Gray,
screaming,
that's
which
not
she's
a
been
point
doing
of
through most
order.
of this
Ms. Gray,
committee and actually control
Ms.
herself.
Gray,
She's been yelling through most of this
going
committee.
into debate. It's coming from both sides. I'll give a lot of latitude. The member that's currently questioning has the floor, and I would expect both the member as well as the witness to respect one another.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Notwithstanding, according to the U of T sociologist Robert Brime, most Jews feel unsafe and victimized. Does that surprise you?
Mr. Chair, I work...
That's a yes or no. My friend, a heart surgeon who teaches heart surgery at U of T, was walking to work. He was prevented to going to work at U of T campus to teach young aspiring doctors. Do you know why? Because he was Jewish. No one from government stood up and spoke out for that man and others like him that are just trying to go to work and teach our young doctors how to treat hearts. Is that acceptable?
Mr. Chair...
I'll take that as...
A chance to respond.
Mr. Chair, we condemn hate and anti-Semitism and hate of
We're
any
not
form
seeing
in
it, Chair.
this country.
I see the rest of my time to Tracy Gray.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair, may I ask if I'll get an opportunity to answer the questions that the members have put forward?
I will give you the time, and I'll keep it out of the time. So yes, go ahead, Madam Minister. It's significant. Answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we condemn on this side unequivocally any form of hate or anti-Semitism in this country. Mr. Chair, we have actually put forward Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate, $274 million supporting communities on the ground. We have put forward $25 million for new Montreal Holocaust Museum, which the Conservative voted against, $5 million for the first ever National Holocaust Remember program, which the Conservative voted against.
Thank you,
so it's shameful for them to pretend like they care about hate when they have not supported the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Order, please. Ms. Gray, you have Mr. Stewart. You have 2.5 minutes.
I just wanted to circle back. I got two quick questions. The first one is a circle back on the anti-Semitic chants that we heard in the streets, both in Montreal and you hear them in Toronto and other places as well. For example, from Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution, Intifada revolution. Do you specifically condemn these chants?
Mr. Chair, I condemn any hatred or any form of anti-Semitism.
I would like to know if you condemn these chants specifically.
Mr. Chair, I condemn any forms of hate or anti-Semitism
that's not an
in
answer
this
to the
country,
question.
and that's why we've actually put forward for Canada's first
That's
ever
not an answer to the
action
question.
plan on combating hate,
The,
$274
Minister, I'll ask the
million,
questions, please.
which the
The
Conservative Party of
synagogues
Canada
and Jewish
voted
schools
against.
are being shot at and
We have
firebombed
put
in
forward.
Toronto, and is this acceptable?
I did not hear the question. I'm sorry.
Synagogues and Jewish schools being shot at and firebombed in Toronto, is that acceptable?
Not at all.
Do you
Absolutely.
specifically condemn it?
Absolutely.
Do you specifically condemn the chants?
I condemn any form of
Please
hatred,
answer the question,
any
yes or no.
form of
You're not answering
intolerance
the question,
in this
Minister.
country, Mr. Speaker. We have seen extremely
I will
high
say
rise
that
in hate in this country.
people in my community are not feeling safe because of the lack of action from the government. Hate crimes are up 251%. 2/3 of those crimes this year are targeted at the Jewish community. They're religiously motivated, and your government has done nothing but foster anti-Semitic sentiment. All I want to know, yes or no, do you specifically condemn the chants that I referenced earlier?
$274 million for Canada's
That's money
action
and
plan
words.
on
That's
combating
that is
hate,
not having an
supporting
effect.
Jewish
Can you
communities
please
on the
condemn
ground.
the
The
chants or no?
Conservative member
I'll
sitting
take
there
that as
has
no, you
voted
don't
against
condemn the
it,
anti-Semitic
just like the
chants.
Conservative Party of Canada, Mr. Chair. It is shameful that they pretend
My
to care about
constituents would assess your
communities when
government
they
as being
vote against
silent on
every single
anti-Semitism.
measure that
in
we
this
have
country,
put
largely
forward to
unopposed by
support
you
Canadians.
and the Prime Minister. We have seen.
Order, Mr. Stewart, please.
Point of order. The interpreters are unable to provide proper interpretation because of this.
Okay, Mr. Stewart, you have 26 seconds left.
Okay. my constituents would assess your government as being silent on anti-Semitism in this country, largely unopposed by you and the Prime Minister. We have seen the denial of rapes and savagery of October 7, 2023, pervasive anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. 3, the denial of Jewish history itself. Jewish people tell me they've lost hope in you and the Prime Minister. Many have lost hope in Canada. Many plan to leave. This hurts our country today and for the coming years to come, culturally and economically. People very close to me are ready to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Will I get an opportunity to answer that question?
Please, short answer, correct.
Mr. Chair, the Conservative Party of Canada, under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre, have voted against $274 million to combat hate in this country. They voted against $25 million for a new Montreal Holocaust Museum, $5 million for the first ever National Holocaust Remembrance Program, funding for Holocaust Education Center, something that the communities have asked for, enhanced security measures for synagogues in this country. They voted against every single one of them. Shame on them.
Thank you. Mr.
works.
Coteau, do you wish, or Mr. Collins, the last 2 minutes?
I'll take it. Minister, do you want to take the last 2.5 minutes to just expand on what you were saying?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And, you know, Mr. Chair, I have to say it has been an extremely difficult time for so many communities in this country, particularly the Jewish and Muslim communities. We have seen the rise in hate and the anxieties that have been fueled by hate and division. And you know, Mr. Speaker, what doesn't help? What doesn't help is when we put supports to support Canadians, supports that the Jewish community has asked for. When we appointed the first ever special envoy to fight anti-Semitism in this country, we enhanced funding for her department, what the community asked for. The Conservatives voted against that. When the community asked $25 million for the new Montreal Holocaust Museum, the Conservative voted against that funding. When we put forward $274 million to combat hate, to put forward actions on the ground, the Conservative Party of Canada voted against. When it comes to hundreds of millions of anti-racism programs through our Canada's anti-racism strategy, the Conservative voted against, Mr. Speaker. It is shameful that they come here, pretend that they care about Jewish Canadians, when every chance that they have gotten, they have voted against the very support that we have put forward. In fact, what we have seen, the leader of the Conservative Party meet with, members of the far-right extremist group like Diagolong that fundamentally believe that people like myself and others do not belong in Canada. It is shameful for them to pretend like they care when their leader will use hashtags on his YouTube videos that actually attract men who hate women. You want to talk about gender-based violence and what perpetuates that? Those kind of things. So when they come here and pretend they care about hate in this country, it's shameful. It is absolutely shameful when they vote against and actually incite hate in this country with their leader and when their conspiracy theories in this country. Shameful.
Clearly state.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Order. What's the point of order?
The point of order was similar to the one I gave earlier about the minister getting control of herself and stop screaming. I think the interpreters don't appreciate.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. That is not a point of order.
Well,
that's not a point of order. I've been listening to both sides, and I've given a good bit of latitude with some new members that appeared here that are not here. But it is their right to participate in the committee. I've given a lot of latitude, and I ask all members to respect that the minister was answering the question she was asked to by the member, Mr. Coteau. You do have a few. Are you through, Minister? Okay, thank you.